Prothom, 14th of February 2024, what will Bangladesh do in the cross-border civil war being sponsored by China? Numerous rebel organizations are battling Chinese control and the Chinese-backed government of Myanmar as a result of China's sponsorship of the Burmese army's seizure of the country. Not only has the Myanmar civil war changed for the combatants, but it has also changed for Bangladesh. The battle between the Arakan Army and the Myanmar army is being fought close to Bangladesh's border. Bullets and shells crossing the border into Bangladesh had already caused several injuries, and on February 5, a mortar shell explosion in Bangladesh claimed the lives of 2 people. A woman from Bangladesh and a man from the Rohingya community were among them. The ambassador of Myanmar was called by the foreign ministry, which also filed a protest. The democratic leader Aung San Suu Kyi was ousted from office 3 years ago when the military in Myanmar, acting under Chinese direction, cancelled the results of the election and seized total control. The confrontation escalated to a new level after that. The military had assumed they could maintain control over events by using their usual tactics of repression and suppression. However, the resistance has changed this time around. Suu Kyi's party's leaders established the National Unity Government, the NLD, NUG. Several failing rebel organizations with an ethnic focus joined them. Under the National Unity Government's auspices, the Bamar youth of the People's Defense Force raised their first guns against the military. Since October, the conflict has been more heated. First, several outposts in the Shan state near the Chinese border were taken over by the Three Brotherhood Alliance, comprised of the Arakan Army and 2 other associated factions. When they grabbed control of the Palitwa town close to the border with Bangladesh, along the edge of the Indian state of Mizoram, the combat became quite close. And most recently, there was violence close to Bangladesh's borders with Tumbru and Alakong. Naturally, nobody anticipates that formal protests from Bangladesh will have any impact on ending or lessening the ongoing crisis that China started. What, then, should Bangladesh do? First, Bangladesh needs to exercise patience, as Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina stated. Bangladesh should never act in a way that suggests it is siding with anyone, regardless of the pressures it may face. Returning the Rohingyas to Myanmar is our primary goal. What will happen in the end with the civil war in Myanmar is unknown. Therefore, we must continue to take a neutral position in the ongoing conflict, given the current conditions. Second, the Arakan Army and the Chinese-sponsored Myanmar military continue to battle in North Rakhine. It is home to the 200,000 to 250,000 Rohingya who are still living in Rakhine. Although the Rohingyas are not the target of the violence, their security will undoubtedly be threatened. They might also try to escape to Bangladesh in search of protection. There is just no way that Bangladesh can accommodate more refugees. This is why opposing any such attempt at all costs is imperative. Thirdly, there is not much distance separating Bangladesh and Myanmar. Enough troops must be sent out to guard this border completely wholly. Bangladesh must display its armed neutrality. Fourth, Bangladesh's only official correspondence with the Myanmar government has been maintained. It is unknown if communication has been established with the other parties involved in the current circumstance. China and India are the 2 significant neighbors of Bangladesh, with interests in Myanmar. China is the Arakan Army's neighbor as well as the principal supporter of the Myanmar Army. The conflict involves 2 parties that are both near China. However, India and the Arakan Army most likely do not get along well. However, India maintains communication with the non-state entities operating in Myanmar. Since the NUG's founding and the Arakan Army's ascent, many of us in Bangladesh have advocated establishing alternate, non-formal communication channels with these groups. Bangladesh might stay informed about border developments if it maintained intense contact with these sources. Making decisions and policies might benefit from this. The crisis has gotten worse, and it has been too long. Still, it is essential to establish contact with the Arakan Army and NUG. Security experts predict that China and India will be against any such move. That may be the case, but it has been demonstrated that our goals in Myanmar diverge from those of these 2 strong allies. Fifth, negotiations about the repatriation of Myanmar Army personnel who escaped into Bangladesh while being pursued by the Arakan Army are currently underway with the military government. It has come to light that those who fled the battlefield have been sentenced to death by the army authorities. Bangladesh is unrelated to that, but we still need to make sure we aren't putting these folks on death row. Last but not least, even though the opposition side is gaining momentum on the Myanmar military, I do not believe this civil war will end with a total loss. Despite all the uncertainty, There is a better chance that the crisis will eventually be resolved at the negotiating table, voluntarily or by the involvement of the major nations. The Arakan Army and the NUG will be key players in deciding the Rohingyas' future in this debate. Regarding the Rohingyas, NUG has committed to several significant things. Although they may have recently changed their position, the Arakan Army has no such obligations. They had made hints that the Rohingyas would eventually be included in the Arakan government. Bangladesh needs to proceed while keeping these signs in mind. I think there is one question in particular that deserves special consideration. Will those who establish their supremacy after making so many sacrifices and fighting so bravely be willing to share the spoils of victory with others who watched on in silence? In the following talks, two nations, China and the United States, will hold power at the negotiating table. China has reportedly made hints that, should the civil war cease, it will help with the Rohingyas' return to Rakhine. It is hard to judge this commitment's credibility. But none of the possibilities should be ruled out. India would likely also participate in the negotiations. Since ASEAN nations will likely play a significant role in resolving the problem, quiet but forceful diplomacy must be launched with them right now. Bangladesh must never waver in its goal of seeing the Rohingyas return to a potential new Myanmar, armed and with their rights.